Sometimes life can feel like a series of resets. We climb up one peak only to get to the top and look around and realize that the peak that's on the other side of the range is the one that you were supposed to climb all along. So what do you do then? If it's you, you tend to uproot. You tend to think that you need to reset everything and start all over again. Because why else? The world's always against you, and maybe people like you aren't supposed to have these things happen. That's the way you used to think. And then you decided that you had enough of that, and you decided to change. I thank you for that. This changed everything for us. And I know that it's going to help a lot of people. Love, present me. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for joining me once again. And has anybody ever had this issue before where you have a picture in your mind of exactly where you want to go and everything is all there? If you close your eyes in your dream, you can picture all of it and all that stuff like that, but you start to climb up this mountain, and then when you get to the top and it's not exactly what you hoped it could be or was supposed to be, that you uproot it. And then you realize as you start to rebuild that you did a lot of things that you wish you would have done different, and most of that stuff is all based on what other people were telling you was there for you, or empty promises, or you name it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And for me, in my instance, what I used to always do is people pleasing. I would lean towards that because I thought, if I would do all of these things, which I didn't want to do most of them, but that would make people like me, and then therefore I would get some sort of external validation. And I would start climbing up this mountain thinking that I was doing what I wanted because I would falsely feel the security of somebody else validating my existence. And then when I would get to the top and they've moved on, I would be left stuck trying to figure out, like, how did I get here and why did I get here, and I don't want to be here. And the first reaction would automatically be shaming myself back into all of the reasons and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. This was a battle constantly that I would go through over and over again. And how I started to kind of realize and started to pull away from that was that I started to look at my life in a different angle. I started to look at what everybody else was offering me as that was what they wanted for themselves. It wasn't what necessarily I wanted for me, and I had to learn how to be brave. Now, that's easier said than done because growing up for me, I felt the best way to do was shrink. I felt it was best to always make sure that people didn't see the real me, because if they saw the real me, they wouldn't like me. And if they don't like me, then how am I ever going to be able to have the impact I want to have in the world? Because people only want to hear from people they like, right? But then I started sharing stories. And I started telling stories that were kind of buried in here. But I started telling them through lenses of characters, because it was a lot easier to tell a story through a character than it was to ever tell people that this is actually how I felt. And that worked for a while. And what it does, though, is it's like a Tom and Jerry cartoon where the water's coming out from all the different spots and you plug all the holes, and then they hit that last one and then water just shoots out of every hole. And that's pretty much what it felt like for a long time for me. It wasn't until I realized that what I was building up was all of these walls, these stories, and I was trying to climb mountains that felt like they were new, but never understanding that inside each valley of these ranges were all the failures, at least things I thought were failures, were actually skills that I needed to climb to the next mountain. My life was an evolution. It wasn't a peak. I thought all I had to do was climb to that one mountain and it was done. And then you're going to be happy. And then when you get there and you see all the externals and you think, well, that didn't make me happy. What's wrong with me? We never look at it from a standpoint of what's wrong with all of that. Instead, we say, what's wrong with me? we never stop sometimes and just look at the lens through which we're looking things through and understand, do I love myself enough to do the brave things that are going to get to me to where I want to go? Why didn't I take that step away when I knew I needed to? Like, we start asking questions of ourselves, and we do this through reflecting. We start to slow the mind down, calm down, take a walk. I don't know, whatever it is for you. For me, it is literally just going for a walk, just listening to the world happen around me. Sometimes it's just writing letters to myself. That all of a sudden the noise starts calming down and I can see through all the mess. I could see that the mountain I'm climbing up actually is just an illusion. That all it is whatever I'm projecting from myself at that time onto the external world. But if I realize that I can actually create this mountain in a way that will benefit myself, not from a selfish standpoint, but myself in the sense of serving the mission that I'm on. So my whole goal is to have an impact on others. I want others to see through the mistakes that I've made a way out of theirs. I might be able to save you some time from going through all the stuff that I've went through. Now, there is a little asterisk to this. You're still going to go through stuff. Like, there is no answer out there that's going to get you to avoid stuff. You're still going to have something hit you really hard, and you're going to have to hit rock bottom. Unfortunately for me, I had to hit rock bottom multiple times before I finally learned this lesson. And the last kick on rock bottom had to be really, really hard. And while I wish that I could avoid all those things, I don't necessarily think that that would have helped. Do I wish that it wouldn't have taken so long? Absolutely. I've been on this journey of storytelling since I was 6. But I've really only been brave enough to tell the real story for the last 2 years. So I'm 46 now, so I'm not good with math, so you figured it out and somebody let me know, but it's a long time. It's a long time to think that your worth is bottled up in everybody else's stamps. It's like having a passport to life that says, can you please stamp this that I'm okay to like now? Because why? What do you hope to accomplish by waiting for everybody else to tell you that it's okay for you to live your life? This mountain you're climbing, whatever it might be for you, it's scary and it's going to have all kinds of things that are going to pop up. I used to make up every excuse I could to avoid those things. And what I realized is that was dumb. I spent so much time waiting for somebody else just to give permission to live. And it took somebody to tell me that I was dying to learn to live. That's crazy. And if you could avoid those moments, and if you could be open up to the idea that you might be wrong, this stuff can change everything for you. If you can be open to the idea that tomorrow you have a choice, you can continue to do everything you've done and expect and get the same results, which is fine. Or you can understand that you can change everything like this. Because the truth is that yesterday happened. It's never going to happen again. But you don't have to live there anymore. All of the stuff that we're reflecting on in our past are just things to make sure that that mountain path that we're building keeps showing up. And when things show up that we don't want in that path or that we know that we need to avoid, we can then look at the things that we've been through in the past and how can we apply that to the present situation to change that. And then we can change that because we can avoid things. Sometimes you got to learn these things multiple times. Think for a second how many times you've started something and given up after 2 days, thinking it's not for you. Or I already know how to do that, or whatever your favorite excuse is. Trust me, I know I use all of them myself. My favorite is that I already know this stuff. But if you start to realize that if you flip that on its head and you just add the word yet to the end of it and change the phrasing of it. Like, this isn't for me yet. This isn't my thing yet. And you start to open yourself up for the possibility of the opposite thing being true. Maybe you're somebody that always only sees the clouds. But understand that even on a cloudy day, the sun's still shining. It didn't disappear. All it is your perspective of that day has changed. This goes the same with your mountain. If you learn as you're traversing this path that you call life, and you want to do what everybody else is telling you is impossible, start to ask better questions. Be aware of what you want to achieve. And then when it feels tough and it feels like you can't go on, are you willing to ask the question, is this moving me towards or away from my mountain? And if it's moving you away from, then you have to be brave and take action in the direction as if you are that person that is achieving those things. And then what happens in that is then you start to get empowered because you have success in it. You start to do stuff. I mean, just stop and think for a second. Put on your, I don't know what you want to call it, like your meditative caps or your imagination caps. See, kids are good at this. Adults, you guys struggle with this. But for a second, just think about the last time you did something that you didn't think you could do. What did it look like? What did it feel like? My guess is it's probably not something that's massively huge. I can tell you for me, something just recently was at the gym where I thought I couldn't hit this number and I ended up going past it. Because for whatever reason, I put the thought in my head that I wasn't strong enough, fast enough, whatever, enough to hit that number. But I took what I learned and what I'm talking about and applied it to this thing. And I started asking different questions. Well, if I was this person, how would I go about this? Maybe I'd pull a little harder. Maybe I would take a different breath here. Maybe I would pause for a second. Maybe I would this. And then the next thing I know is I surpassed the number just because I stopped listening to what I consider to be a possibility. And that broke impossible. This goes the same for anything in your life. You can apply it to any of the stuff that you're struggling with. I know for me, when I was told that I'd be dead in 7 months, I never allowed myself to accept that that was true. What I did allow was to feel all of it. I felt every bit of it. And we will talk about this many times because it is so relatable to a lot of the things that we're going to discuss on here. But I never allowed that feeling to take over my life because I wasn't done living yet. I wasn't quite sure what the mission was yet, but I knew that I wasn't done yet. And that goes the same for you. As you start to go through and redefine your possibilities, you have to take a moment. You can't just always go. It's not worked for you. You know, you can't just keep climbing a mountain that you have no clue of what you're climbing for, or the why, or the how, or the whatever, like any of it. So many times that we're just moving because we think we're getting stuff done, and then we wonder why do I feel like I've gotten nothing done? Or why is it that people aren't helping me? Because you're seeking validation from others instead of yourself. You're not willing to accept when good stuff happens to you as that you're deserving of it. And you're also new to it. It's that simple. And when you're new to something, when it starts happening, a lot of us, myself included, thinks that means that it's supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be this easy. I'm not supposed to be able to do this and people actually pay me to do this. You know, I remember when I get my first book deal, I thought like I wanted to write books since I was 6 and I was so afraid to do it. And I wanted to have this book with this big publisher and all this stuff. There was just years of ideas. And it turns out that my first publisher was that publisher. The first book I wrote was that like an idea that was all my idea. And my life didn't change. It just happened to be now I was a published author. But the insecurities were still there and all that stuff like that. It wasn't until I started to allow myself to accept that this is okay, that some of the stuff just happens and it's all right because we can evolve and be good at that. So whatever it is your challenge that you're going through right now, I want to leave you with this thought. As you climb this mountain of life, things are going to happen. You can continue to keep pushing off tomorrow until tomorrow. That will never come. Or you can start to understand that the past is gone. It's never going to come back. Today is the only thing that's real. And whoever promised you that tomorrow is going to come? Stop living in an illusion, waiting for your life to be perfect. It's already perfect. Some of the worst things about life is the bad stuff. It's just as normal as the good stuff. And when you learn how to accept that, and you learn how to love yourself and understand that fear has no place in this world for you, and that you can overcome that, then eventually what you're going to find is that it gets a lot easier, and the peaks that you're going to look out over are going to look so much more beautiful, because you realize that in those valleys lies all the things that got you there, that have inspired so many other people, that they're all standing on their mountain and they're happy for you to see you at the top of yours. Hope this helps. Power up.
Boxland Media. Think big.